Now I've got a pretty fun pattern for you today that up until a few years ago was almost lost to the ages. The fly is called the Eggie Special, and it was created by Egbert Earl Eggie Bugby of Grayling, Michigan. Now it's an interesting story on how this fly was saved from obscurity. Now it is mentioned in Tom Deschain's Michigan Dry Flies, and I won't say that it's never been in any books, but it's not in any that I have. So, back in 2014, Paul Beel, who runs the popular fly tying blog Frankenfly, and if you're a fly tyer and are not familiar with Frankenfly, definitely check it out. I'll link to it in the description. It is a great resource for fly tyers for patterns both new and old. So Paul sees a post of an Eggie Special tied by Bob Smock, another legendary Grayling, Michigan fly tyer. And apparently there'd been some debate over the years on exactly how this fly was originally tied. And Paul wasn't sure if what Bob had posted was Eggie's original recipe. So he posts about it on Frankenfly, and Eggie's grandson Dale sees a post and comments on it. So they talk back and forth a little bit, and Dale puts Paul in touch with Robert, his dad, who is Eggie's son, and then he calls him to talk about this pattern and about Eggie Bugby. And it turns out Robert had some of his dad's old flies, so he sends them to Paul with the original recipes. So this classic Michigan fly created by Eggie Bugby probably as far back as the 1920s was pretty close to being lost to the ages. But through Paul's research and conversations with Eggie's family, we now have a pretty accurate representation and a nice historical record of this pattern. And I think that's pretty cool. I hope y'all like this one. So there we go, in the vise, an Eggie Special. Now I'm really digging this fly. It reminds me a lot of something that an old Smoky Mountain tyer would have come up. So folks down in Tennessee and North Carolina might have been pretty proud of this thing. And sizes for this are 10 or 12. I'm gonna go into 12 because I typically like the smaller sizes. And black thread, I'm gonna catch it on just up here at the front. Now I'm going to leave my thread hanging where I want to post these wings up, and the wings are this barred ginger. Pretty cool looking stuff. If you don't have this, I would just recommend going with a grizzly, but I wanted to catch them in right there where my thread is, and everything forward is going to be how high they are, how tall these wings are. So a little pinch wrap right there, and then fold that up, and then envision, is that going to be high enough? Because my hackle is going to be about 1.5 times the hook gap. I think we're going to be fine there, so let's go ahead and secure these. Now you have an option with flies like this. Do you want to go ahead and post these up, or do you want to go do a tail in the body and then post them up? I'm going to do it now because even though it might get a little bit in the way, it will give you an opportunity to trim this. See, if you look at that, you're going to have some of these fibers right here going forward, and it's kind of hard to get this really clean. So I'm going to lift that up and put just a few wraps right here to really prop that up. But you see, I've got all those extra fibers sticking out and around. You could either just ignore them and then kind of wrap them up in your head, or spend just a few seconds and try to clean it up right now. Okay, so I just spent a couple of seconds to clean it up right there, and I might have nicked my thread, so I'm gonna have to spend a few wraps working through that. But before we move on to the back, let's just split these. So, I'm gonna put 2 wraps from back to forward right here, and then I'll do 2 wraps from forward to back on this side. Okay, so I've got them standing up, and they're a little bit more splayed out than I want, but we can take care of that when we're wrapping our hackle later. We can use that to kind of adjust where they stand. So go ahead and take your thread to the back, and we'll tie in a tail. Or before I do that, I do have a couple extras right here that I can just go ahead and clean up. Okay, that's fine. Now the tail, 3 or 4 strands of turkey tail feathers. And this is pretty unique for a tail because it's not real stiff. It's kind of long, at least a body length. And Tom Deschain's Michigan Dry Flies, his recipe said pheasant tail fibers. So if you don't have turkey tail, I think pheasant tail are going to work just fine. But let's get that caught in and snip this excess. And now we're going to catch in a brown hackle that we're going to palmer up. So this one is a really small hackle. I want these barbs to be no longer than the hook gap. So I'm going to catch that in with a little bit of bare stem showing so my first wrap will not be putting down any fibers. And I'm actually going to put a little bit of dubbing, one wrap of dubbing behind this feather right here. So let's put some wax on our thread and grab our dubbing. And the recipe for this one calls for a yellow wool. And I'm actually just using a yellow wool yarn, this stuff right here. And what I did, I took about 8 inches of it, literally maybe even 6 inches, cut it into 1/2-inch pieces, and then put that in my coffee grinder. And I made this much dubbing right here. This is enough for 50 of these flies. So 6 inches of yarn. And I way overdid it, which I do all the time. But it doesn't take much because this body's not real long. If you look at it, we're just wrapping from the tail to behind those wings, so it doesn't take much dubbing at all. What I'll end up doing is just putting that yellow in a little Ziploc bag and writing yellow wool on it so that I will have it for next time. So I'm using a few wraps to get me back. Now I'm going to put one wrap behind this. Now just take the rest of this dubbing all the way up to the wing. And don't worry if you're a little bit fuzzy right there. This palmered hackle, we can use that to kind of flatten this body again. But go ahead and wrap this up. I'd say 4 or 5 wraps on this size 12 would be fine. Okay, I think that is enough for our palmered body. We've got a little bit of that wool sticking out. And you notice these wings, they're going a little bit all over on me, but we can, kind of position those when we wrap our front hackle. And for the front hackle, it's just a brown and grizzly. This is another reason this reminds me of a Smoky Mountain fly. And these feathers are longer than that last one because, well, this is, we want these to be about 1.5 times the hook gap. This is the main hackle on the fly. So I'm going to catch both of these in on the back. Go ahead and bend these stems forward, catch them in up here, and then snip them. Now we'll just wrap these one at a time. Maybe 2 wraps behind and 2 wraps in front for each, but just kind of use your judgment on how many you think you can get and how bushy of a fly you want it. So you might only need 1 behind and 1 or 2 in front. Now for the brown, let's just try to zigzag this through here. And it's a little bit of a fuzzy mess right now, but we'll clean it up in a second. We'll have a good looking fly in the end. Okay, so we've got that. Before I snip off that, I'm just going to push everything back and try to make some room for my head here. And I've got a couple fibers going forward. Either snip or burn or try to pull out with your tweezers. But I think we're fine. Let's try to get a whip finish in right here. And I can tell, even though I'm going to try to zigzag this through, I might trap 1 or 2 of these fibers. We'll see. Now it looks like I did okay right there. Let's snip this and then take care of this excess feather right here. Now let's see if we got any cleanup. I think those wings are sticking up okay. And critiquing this one, that front hackle is probably just a little bit longer than I want, but I think we got a fishable fly. So there you go, folks, the Eggie Special. Pretty cool looking, pretty fun pattern. Now I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care and we'll see you next time.